we're going to go to Panera Bread in Ames. Oh, great. Awesome. I'm so excited to go to Panera Bread in Ames, Iowa. No, I'm not. I don't care. Oh, you guys got a bridge? Oh, sick. You built a bridge. Cool. Good job, guys. No, Ames, get out of here. You can come at me. I don't care. Come find me. Ames is no, bottom of the barrel of the Big 12 Conference in terms of town.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Paid all the winter, and beware, this podcast. That's right, this is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer. I've got Kevin Flaherty with me. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. And we're here to talk more on KU football's fall camp as they are rapidly approaching the conclusion of fall camp. And today, Thursday, August 15th, was actually the final day that the media got a chance to go out and see them at practice and hear from some of the coordinators and coaches before KU football will have their big media day coming up next week, which we'll have plenty of coverage of that, of course, here on the Paid Podcast, as well as we are now exactly 2 weeks away from kickoff. If you're listening on Thursday afternoon or if you're listening on Friday or over the weekend, it's actually less than 2 weeks. So Congrats to future you. It's even less. It's even less in that case, under 2 weeks. So very exciting times for KU. And as I said, today was sort of the last chance for the media to talk at fall camp or to see at fall camp some of the players practice and talk to some of the coaches and coordinators. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We'll also later on in the show dive into the end of our Jayhawk Rewind series. We finally made it. We got through all 13 games that KU has played, or all 12 games KU has played, now into the 13th with KU against UNLV. That's going to be an exciting conversation I'm excited for later on the show because of the fact that KU is going to be playing UNLV again very soon. So there is a lot to dive into with that. As always, if you like what you're hearing, if you like what you're watching, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, share your thoughts on how you are feeling heading into this football season for KU. And be sure to go and subscribe on our YouTube channel as well at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN on YouTube for exclusive YouTube content we're posting there. And also you get to see our beautiful faces also if you want to watch the show as well. So be sure to go over there and hit the subscribe button and also leave a 5-star rating and review if you're listening on audio on Apple and Spotify as well, as that helps us out as well. Kevin, okay, last chance we got to see KU really at practice before the start of the season. How are you feeling right now? How are you feeling? We're 2 weeks away from the season. What's the vibe with Kevin at the moment?
They're undefeated, right, Nick? I mean, I think most of the time when you get a chance to go to camp and everything, there's a level of optimism. You've been waiting, since the spring really to get a chance to see him play. The season's almost there, and so there's that excitement level there. But even beyond that, Nick, we talked about on previous episodes. Kansas getting ranked in both polls and all of the things that go along with it. The buzz around this program is about as positive as it could possibly be at this point in time. And I thought it was kind of interesting today getting to talk to both coordinators, Jeff Grimes, Brian Borland. Also got the always energetic Matt Gildersleeve, who makes media members want to run through the walls and go pick up weights possibly for the first time in all of our lives. But he was pretty bullish on the development and the way guys are coming along physically. I thought, Grimes almost seemed a little bit more, what would you say, even keeled maybe in terms of the way his analysis of the offense and where it was going. It wasn't that he was all out like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, but it was also very clear that he was saying, hey, there's work that still needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Grimes was very interesting in some of what he said. He outright stated, I was frustrated with the tight ends at the start of camp, basically, about sort of where their development is. Of course, Grimes being the offensive coordinator and also tight ends coach, taking over for the same role that Eddie Kolnicki had. So he's working with the tight end group, something that he's done in the past as well. And yeah, he very openly stated I was frustrated with the tight end group and sort of where they're at and where they were at the start of fall camp. And he kind of broke it down, right? So for those that maybe don't know about sort of the schedule of fall camp, he's been on a schedule of 4 consecutive days of practices plus a day off. And so Grimes was really kind of breaking it down that way of, hey, these 4 days we made some progress. These 4 days we were fine. These next 4 days we made more progress, so on and so forth. And so he kind of went through that specifically with the tight end group, talking about that and how he was frustrated maybe with them at the start of camp, but how they have been able to make progress through the season. And you just get the sense, I think, that Jeff Grimes he has extremely, extremely high standards. Right?
Yes.
That was kind of my takeaway, which is, he's demanding perfection out of the offense, and I think he probably more than anybody else recognizes and understands the level of talent that is on this offense and what the ceiling for KU's offense could be. And when you have a collection of players like that, you have to be nitpicky, right, to make them to get them to elevate even further than what they can, right? So that was kind of my initial thought was, okay, this is Jeff Grimes saying, hey, look, sure, yeah, we've got some players, we got some talented guys, but that doesn't mean anything if we can't put it together on the field. And so even more so, he talked about the offensive line too in that manner as well, which is, as we know, there's an ongoing position battle at the center position between Bryce Foster and Shane Bumgardner. There's been some shuffling at the tackle position as well throughout the course of fall camp, with Bryce Cabledew seemingly moving to left tackle. He's been playing right tackle for pretty much his entire career. We had a chance to see him doing some drills at the left tackle position today at practice with Logan Brown on the right side. So there's been some shuffling on the offensive line. And again, I think today, with some of the ways in which Jeff Grimes is speaking about the offensive line and sort of the offense as a whole, you could walk away from it feeling a bit dejected, but I don't think that was really what he was going for. I think he was just being realistic of, hey, listen, at the center position, we've got a transfer from the D2 that we think can come play at the Power 5 level, the Power 4 level. We've got a guy from Texas A&M who joined the team 2 months ago that we're trying to get up to speed, and there's a battle there. We've got some shuffling going on. Also, at the same time, we hear from Dale Paulso, the offensive line coach himself, saying, listen, we're trying to also cross-train these guys and figure out not only who our top 5 are, but who our 6th and 7th guys are, so we can shuffle properly. So there's a lot to unpack there. And I think similarly to the conversation we had sort of with the D-line, concern is too strong of a word for my feeling at the moment, as much as just, okay, I'm curious to see how this is going to play out and what it means for KU at the start of the season. And I also think that it's possible that what we see from KU at the beginning of the season is not what we see from them at the end of the season from that position group. So that was kind of my takeaway. Again, I think if you took sort of what Grimes was saying at face value, you might come away and say, oh man, is the offense really there? But I don't know. I kind of took it more as, hey, Jeff Grimes is a guy that understands what this offense possesses and understands that if the offense is going to achieve what they believe they can do and what he believes they can do, you need to demand perfection. You need to demand, the highest level of accountability from the players to push them to reach those goals that they have, which is to be playing in Arlington in December and even beyond potentially.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it was he was talking about the depth and the need for those guys to kind of step up, right? It was a little bit of, hey, we know what we have with a lot of these pieces. They're talented guys who have played a lot of football. Having said that, for KU to reach its goals that you're talking about, they're going to need other guys to step in. And I'm glad you brought up the offensive line stuff, because they've talked about, we're trying to find our best 5, but then also as far as the rotation goes, you don't necessarily want, hey, this guy is going to go in because he's the backup tackle at this spot. You want your next best lineman rotating in. You want your next best lineman after that rotating in. And so building that quality depth and getting to a spot where they feel comfortable with it was something they talked about, not just offensively, Nick, but also defensively, with Brian Borland talking about kind of the process there in terms of saying, hey, we've got some frontline guys that we really maybe feel good about. Now, what's going to happen behind those guys? How are those guys going to continue to develop to be there? And I thought, even taking it a step further, when we talked to Gildersleeve, one of the interesting things that kind of tied it all together was him talking about DJ Warner, right? And talking about, hey, the ability's there, the kid's working really hard, but he needs to realize, it's not an outcome-based deal. It's a process, oriented deal. And so, if he gets there every day, is coachable, works hard, and buys in, then he's everything else should take care of itself. And I think there's some of that with this too, Nick, just in terms of sitting there and kind of saying, hey, this process isn't done yet, right? Yes, you're number 22, but that's a result. And technically it's not even a result because it's before the season, but you don't focus on results. You focus on, doing the little things right. And then the big things take care of themselves.
Yeah, and for, Matt Gildersleeve may not be a name that the average KU fan really fully understands what he does, but that guy is truly one of the driving engines of the KU football program. He is an incredible individual to speak to. He's incredibly energetic. He is the strength conditioning coach for KU, for those that may not be aware, and he does a lot, and he works with a lot of the players and builds them up. So, when you hear or listen to us or others talk about, hey, a guy like Dean Miller has been able to put on some weight and do some different stuff. Hey, Bryce Cabledew is maintaining weight. Hey, some of the D tackles have put on a lot of muscle. A lot of that is due to Matt Gildersleeve and what he does in terms of strength and conditioning and getting the players where they want to be in terms of their size and their physicality and their strength and ability. So he is somebody that probably doesn't get enough credit, and I think he'd be an individual quick to say, well, it's not me, but he is a guy that definitely does a lot within the KU football program, and it's always great to hear from him. And yeah, he spent a lot of time talking about sort of what you outlined, which is, working on the process, not focus on the end goal, and helping to get the players there. And I think a lot of people sometimes will say, we'll focus on a guy in the offseason, like a Dean Miller, who we hope can have an impact this season for KU. A player who, okay, since the spring, it seems like, things have really clicked for him. But it's not really since the spring. It's really since day one he was on campus, right? The process there's not a light switch. There's not a switch you just flip on where the process starts from this day, right? It starts from when you first get on campus. So that's kind of what stood out to me about some of that conversation. And then, yeah, I think when you look at the defense, one of the things I love about Brian Borland is that he is very straightforward and very honest. And I think he had some interesting things to say today about this idea of, hey, this staff is very honest and, blunt really to the players about X, Y, and Z. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to get on the field and make an impact, and how some of those guys have responded to that, like a Dean Miller, for example, who we hope will make some plays on the field for KU this season. So, yeah, overall, I mean, it's sort of the end of fall camp from the media perspective in terms of us being able to go out and see the team and practice and whatnot. But I think the sense continues to remain, hey, this is a team that should be competing for a Big 12 title. I think, when internally there's a lot of that discussion, probably certainly among the team with the players of, hey, that's the goal. But also I think there's sort of this pushing and pulling of, I think, with the staff of, great, yes, that is the goal, but it's a long-term goal, and kind of what you mentioned, tying it back in with Matt Gildersleeve of, you got to focus on the day-to-day to get to that long-term goal.
Yeah, and another thing that Matt Gildersleeve mentioned that all the players have mentioned, they've given so much credit to Katie O'Connor with nutrition and what she's been able to do. I thought it was great about where Gildersleeve was saying she's really hard on them. She won't let them get away with not hitting their nutrition goals and things like that. When you look at guys like Caleb Taylor, who really struggled to add and maintain weight, now being able to maintain it at 315. You look at Bryce Cabledew, who was out there on the field at 280-ish pounds. I think he said that he's 318 right now, and has that weight maintained. You mentioned Dean Miller, another guy that, this is a guy who was playing defensive end in the 180-pound range in high school that's now 235 pounds, and he's maintaining it despite losing 5 to 9 pounds of sweat at an average practice. So when you look at all of those things, the staff just seems so aligned in terms of the process of growing these guys, but also, just sort of the development from nutrition, strength, and then once they get on the field, hey, getting everything right in that regard. And so I think tying it all back with a nice little bow, listening to Grimes talk about it and listening to him say, hey, there's work to be done. They're not where we want them to be yet. I think that, like you said, it's not the sort of thing that there are different stages of alarm, right? The hair on the back of your neck raises, whatever else. It was maybe an eyebrow raising comment, but at the same time, when you look at it within that lens, of course, it's going to be something where they're not there yet, where they still have work to do. And like you said, the pieces are there. And I think, to your point, when you look at Kansas as a Big 12 contender, I think that's the one positive thing you can really say coming out of at least what we've been able to see at practice is, hey, this team looks like it should look. They're kind of acting like they should act for a team that has a chance to have that among their goals at the end of the season.
Well, look, if you want to go cheer on KU and Arlington, you want to be looking good as well, and you can look good in home field apparel. They've got the new exclusive KU football box that you can find on homefieldapparel.com. Listen, they didn't give the football boxes to every school, right? Only select schools got them. 55 schools, KU was one of them. It's got to get you covered for the entire football season with a shirt, long sleeves, hoodie, so you can throw that on during the winter months. Obviously, if they take it to Arlington, you won't need a hoodie. You just wear a shirt because it's inside and it's nice and, weather temperature regulated. But there you go. You want to head over to Whole Field Apparel. They've also got tons of other schools as well. My Youngstown State shirt is in the mail, so I'm very pumped for that to represent my guy, Dylan Woodkey. We got a chance to speak to earlier this week. He's fantastic, so I'll be repping Youngstown State along with Kansas. Kevin's got Tulane. You can find 130 other schools over at homefieldapparel.com. And you can use the promo code PAYHEED24, PAYHEED24. PAYHEED24, 15% off your first purchase at homefieldapparel.com. Be sure to check them out over at homefieldapparel.com. More paid coming up.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, along with Kevin Flaherty. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, leave a comment, share your thoughts as KU prepares to enter to the 2024 season, as we are excited as ever, and you won't want to miss any of our coverage here on the Kansas City Sports Network. If you want to go on YouTube, it's Kansas Jayhawks KCSN on YouTube for exclusive Kansas content. Hear from us there on our YouTube channel. Kevin, before we go any further, I do have to get something off my chest.
Here it goes.
We have a chance to speak with some players over the course of fall camp, and it's always great to hear from the players. It's great to see the guys' personalities, to hear some of their stories, talk about them. Alex Reich was a good example of a guy that is from Switzerland, played football there, came to the U.S., and it's now on KU. Dak Brinkley shared some thoughts about how his dad really helped him because his dad played in the NFL. Some great conversations with some different players. We got to speak with some of the old linemen early this week. One of them being Iowa State transfer Daryl Simmons. And Daryl Simmons, fantastic player. He's actually gotten a lot of positive. There's been a lot of positive chatter around Daryl Simmons as a guy that could battle in the offensive line rotation at the guard position. He started some games for Iowa State a season ago, so he has Power 5 starting experience in the Big 12. Daryl Simmons was asked a question about Ames versus Lawrence. And this man, I love Daryl Simmons, but he had the audacity to say that Ames and Lawrence were the same. Dude, what? What? I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. Dude, I have been to Ames. I have lived in Lawrence for many years of my life. When I went to KU and afterwards, there's not a single thing to say about them. I got to figure out where he gets this idea of they're the same, right? Now, listen, I get it. For some people, I understand. For some people that come from different parts of the country, right, people obviously have their perceptions of Kansas as being sort of this farmland, it's flat, farm, whatever, right, country, But Lawrence, there's definitely aspects of that, but it's a thriving city. I love Lawrence. If I were to go through and rank the Big 12 hounds, Lawrence would be close to number one for me. You know where Ames would be? Close to the last one, okay? Ames stinks. And I don't care if I upset an Iowa State fan. Ames is terrible. I do not like Ames. I've been there a couple of times. It's awful. Lawrence is way better. And so, I didn't want to say that to Daryl because I didn't want to come off as mean or anything. But But yeah, I was surprised by that. Hopefully Daryl Simmons enjoys his time in Lawrence. Hopefully we get to see him on the field and we get to enjoy him on the field also. But yeah, man, I mean, dude, come on. I mean, Ames is right there with Manhattan in terms of some of the worst in the Big 12. Lawrence is near the top. And
so Nick, what you're saying is wide right, natty light, Iowa State fans, they can find you on Twitter, Instagram.
And Iowa State fans, come at me. What? We're going to go to Panera Bread in Ames? Oh, great. Awesome. I'm so excited to go to Panera Bread in Ames, Iowa. No, I'm not. I don't care. Oh, you guys got a bridge? Oh, sick. You built a bridge. Cool. Good job, guys. No, Ames, get out of here. You can come at me. I don't care. Come find me. Ames is bottom of the barrel of the Big 12 Conference in terms of towns.
Why is Manhattan taking strays though? I know we're coming in with the Lawrence versus Ames thing, but then you drop the stray in there for Manhattan.
Well, they just I'm sure they did something to deserve it. I don't know. Whatever. It's fine. No, but in terms of Big 12 towns that I do like, Lawrence obviously. I know you covered Texas, and you spent some time in Austin. I spent some time in Austin.
The longer Big 12 town, though.
That's true. It's all. Yeah, that's a good point. So you take Austin out. I liked Fort Worth, TCU. Lubbock is how I thought all of Texas was before I moved to Texas, or before I went to Texas, other parts of Texas. I thought everyone in Texas just walked around in cowboy hats and giant belt buckles, but they only do that in Lubbock. So.
Lubbock's a sleepy, fun place. Also, I remember you asking me on Rock Chalk Sports Talk one time if you could have a meal, like basically your day's worth of meals set up across Big 12 towns at that time. You pick a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner spot, and you could go to the Big 12 towns. What would you do? And if you remember right, I picked breakfast tacos in Lubbock. So, if you can get good breakfast tacos and you can get them in that's all a city needs for me. I at that point I give it 2 thumbs up, honestly.
And I have been fortunate enough to have already been to some of the new schools in the Big 12. Also, Salt Lake City, Provo. I guess BYU was already in. Orlando with UCF, Houston. Haven't been to Arizona. Or State. So I am planning a trip to go to the KU Arizona State game. So. If you're going to that game, you may see me. I might be there for that one in 10.
In a home field apparel.
That's true. Yeah, you'll see me in my home field apparel, and I'll be looking snazzy. And then you might see me there. So, anyways, yeah. So I didn't mean to derail this. I just had to get Ames stinks. I don't care. Iowa State fans can cry more if they want. Whatever, fine. I will say this about Iowa State fans. Obviously, Ames stinks, like I said, but. Iowa State fans, if we were talking about fan bases, Iowa State fans, I have to respect their dedication and their support. They're probably one of the most dedicated fan bases in the conference, I would think. I know people get annoyed with them because they boo everything, which is that's fine.
Honestly, it's one of those things where to me, it's a feature, not a bug.
I agree.
It's something that they're known for it. And actually, when I went down to cover Texas, one of the other reporters down there, I was talking about how much Iowa State fans booed, and he's like, "No, you're pushing this thing, further than it needs to be pushed." And then we went up there, and he goes, "My God, I don't know how I didn't realize it beforehand. These guys would boo anybody, but I think it's fantastic. The energy they bring." It's a level of hostility that I think is pretty unique. I mean, things can get hostile in Lubbock, definitely can get hostile in Morgantown, but Iowa State fans and their relationships with officials over the course of a game is pretty fantastic. And Nick, turning everything back to KU, I think that's the most intriguing game I think this year from is it a home game? Is it a neutral game? Is it, the standpoint is when Kansas and Iowa State play at Arrowhead, Kansas fans better pony up and fill that place because there is a very real chance if 45,000 KU fans come to that place at Arrowhead, that thing may be a sellout and it may seem a lot closer to a neutral site game than people, would want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I mean, we talked about that in previous episodes of the pod as well about that game. And yeah, it would be very, very interesting. So I just to wrap this up real quick, I do want to be clear. Iowa State fans, I respect you. I hear you. Obviously, I have to hear you because you just boo all the time. But Ames Ames sucks compared to Lawrence. I'm sorry. So case closed. Okay, let's move on to our final Jayhawk Rewind of the year. We've gone through every game for KU in 2023, looked at it in 2024, what it means. And this one is even more significant for a variety of reasons, obviously. One being at KU's bowl game, the most recent game they played, which was against UNLV on December 26, 2023. And on top of all that, KU is through a stroke of scheduling luck or misfortune or however you want to, whatever you think it might be, KU's going to play UNLV again in like less than a month. So they're going to be playing one team twice within a span of 4 games over the course of 8 months, obviously, with the offseason. But yeah, so this game is a little bit more interesting. You go back to this one, Kansas goes to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. They get a UNLV team that went to the Mountain West Championship game, actually, and did not win it. Now they play against Kansas in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. And this is a team that had sort of a breakout star at quarterback in Jade Maiava, who was a freshman who had kind of burst out of the scene a little bit as sort of the guy to keep an eye on. They also have one of the more talented wide receivers in the country, actually probably on their team. And this is something that's going to apply to 2024 as well. And that's Ricky White, who had almost 100 yards for UNLV in this game against Kansas in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. And he's back. And again, probably one of the top wide receivers that people don't talk that much about in the country. So this was a game set up to where you felt like Kansas had a chance to get a bowl win here after the loss in 2022 in the Liberty Bowl against Arkansas. You're feeling good about KU's chances in this one. Jason Bean was going to be ready to go, obviously, going into this one. And on top of all that, you're playing in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, which, by the way, it's played in a baseball stadium, which I don't know. I don't really – I mean, I'll just say this about the baseball stadium stuff. Like, playing at Yankee Stadium or playing at like Wrigley Field, that's fine. Cool. Sure. Whatever. I don't need to just be playing random, like, no offense to the Arizona Diamondbacks. I mean, I'm already on a roll here offending different people as of whenever. I don't need to be watching a football game at the Arizona Diamondbacks Stadium. Like, can we just play somewhere else? I don't know. That's my thought. But yeah, heading into this one, Kevin, you felt probably pretty solid about Kansas and where they were at. What was kind of your thoughts heading into the Guaranteed Rate Bowl for KU?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll get a little bit more into betting lines here in a minute, not to spoil it. But remember, Jason Bean, it was reported that he was sick. And so, there was some kind of like wild line movement with that. And so it was, will he play? Won't he play? How healthy will he be? And so there was a little bit of that. From a bowl trip standpoint, I think, a letdown is too strong. But I think the previous year, because they hadn't been to a bowl game in so long, plus it being in Memphis, you were going to get such a great bowl turnout and see, it was funny. I was at, actually, I think Abe and Jake's or whatever. There was like a beer fest or Beers of Kansas or whatever they called it. And I was standing in line, and there were people there who were like, yeah, I haven't gone to a KU game in years, but I'm going to go to Memphis for the bowl game, and so it was, you went from that kind of energy to people were kind of hoping, I think, for different bowl sites. And so to wind up going to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, like I said, a letdown is too strong, but you had been to a bowl just the previous year, had kind of broken that streak, maybe not quite as desirable a location. UNLV versus Arkansas, which UNLV, like you said, super fun team. I mean, run the go-go offense, everything else. But I think for your average fan, it's not the same as, you're playing an SEC squad or whatever else. And so, there was a little bit of that. And so I think you were hoping that there wasn't, Kansas not starting off well or not bringing full effort into this or whatever else. And the great thing about this Leipold staff is you can very rarely say, Kansas comes to play, pretty much every game. There's a consistency level with the effort. They don't always play well, but the effort is there. Not a great start, though. You have the opening kickoff, go out of bounds. UNLV goes straight down the field, gets a touchdown. You're down 0-7, and it's just kind of like, I don't think there was any worry at that point, but it was just kind of like, well, that could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, the opening kickoff may have been an omen of things to come with the penalties, by the way, a harbinger of issues with the opening kickoff going out of bounds to begin. But yeah, real quick, I just wanted to circle back to that point you made about, I think absolutely the point about UNLV not being as flashy of a team. Like, again, here I go again, offending different people. UNLV is not flashy. Yeah, I'll say it. UNLV is not it wasn't as eye-grabbing as what a potential Power 5 matchup could be. But again, I think UNLV was a really solid team, obviously. And yeah, they ran a very unique style of offense with Jade Maeva, and they started off really strong going down the field against Kansas for a touchdown. After a couple of 3-and-outs, Kansas was pretty uninspired on their opening drive on offense. They really get things going.
Holding penalty knocks out a 36-yard run on that first drive. And remember that, because that's going to come up quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah. The omen of penalties, of yellow laundry, nightmares of seeing yellow.
Yellow. And that was yellow. I don't know what the end time was on this, Nick, but it was a game that felt like it took about 35 hours by the time you were finished with it.
Yeah, and obviously it was a late start, I think, because they're playing on the West Coast, obviously. So it was a bit of a late kickoff. 100% agree with that. UNLV would eventually put the ball back to Kansas. They get it at their own 2, and Kansas would come to life with a 9-play, 98-yard touchdown drive. There was a pass to Trevor Wilson for a deep play. There was a pass to Quinn Skinner for a deep play. Kansas would go down. Eventually, Jason Lee would find Luke Grimm for a touchdown to make it 7-7. By the way, that connection to Luke Grimm, that's something else that we're going to be talking about quite a bit, because obviously that also was something noteworthy from this game. But yeah, Kansas wakes up, and they get on the board to make it 7-7. UNLV, again, with that go-go offense, they move quickly. There was another penalty against Kansas that they got UNLV down deep into Kansas territory near the red zone. And then Kobe Bryant does his thing, man. Does his thing, picking off Jade Maeva to help keep the score tied at that point for Kansas. And that's just what Kobe Bryant does. I know there were some unsubstantiated rumors about Kobe Bryant and an injury, as far as we always find, so no need to be panicking about that. I think a friend of the show, Michael Swain, actually said it best one time on social media about Kobe Bryant, which is you just can't. Those guys, they like to have a good time. You just can't buy too much into what they're doing on social media. So,
yeah, it's I would for your mental health and your sanity or whatever. I'm not saying that you shouldn't follow those guys, but take what the DBs say in a lot of cases with a grain of salt. But you mentioned Luke Grimm, and it seems like he's got another moment coming up, Nick.
Yeah, a deep pass from Jason Bean to Luke Grimm for another touchdown for Kansas on a quick play. If I'm not mistaken, Jason Bean fumbled on the play prior, right? But he got it back, or something happened there.
I think he might be right. But yeah, that was the easiest touchdown of the year. UNLV sent like a corner blitz, from what I remember. There was nobody outside, and Luke Grimm did one of those, like throwing his hands up in the air almost immediately. Bean does find him. There was nobody there. Gets a 60-yard catch and run touchdown, and just like that, you're up 14-7, and then one of your favorite drives, Nick. UNLV going on a drive, and the end result.
Yes, they go on. Now, okay, the thing with UNLV, though, and that's more fun about this drive, is because they run so quick in that offense, it actually only took them about 2.5 minutes. Is, the drives that I hate are the drives where it's like a 6-minute drive or a 5.5-minute drive.
7-minute drive, no points. Yeah, or even 3 points in that case.
Yeah, those are the drives that I hate. But yeah, UNLV, they end up going down, and they end up missing a field goal. And one thing that's interesting about this is UNLV's kicker was, I believe, an All-American, and he missed a 52-yarder. So KU maybe got somewhat fortunate, I guess. I mean, obviously, it's college football, so a 52-yard field goal is not easy, even for the best kickers in college. But a miss there for UNLV. Kansas goes down. They capitalize. on it by another long pass from Jason Bean to Luke Grimm. Again, this was
it was already over 100 yards at that point. Like we're in the second quarter, he's already over 100 yards.
Yeah, this was the Luke Grimm / Lawrence Arnold game. Both of them just went off really for KU. It was Luke Grimm early in the game, like you mentioned, with the 60-yard touchdown. He has another long pass on this drive, and then it's a touchdown pass to Lawrence Arnold from Jason Bead that puts Kansas up 21-7. And I don't know. I don't want to say that I started feeling too comfortable, but I definitely got the vibe that like I didn't think UNLV was going to be able to come back to win at that point.
Yeah, I felt the same way, and I'm trying to remember. I think that Arnold touchdown catch wound up on the whole "you got mossed" thing because he went up over the corner, and they mentioned it on the broadcast, like, "Oh, that's going to be on you got mossed," and I think it did wind up being on there, and I think. We usually, when we do this rewind series, we try to talk about what happened, but also kind of how it will impact what we're looking forward to. And I think Arnold showed at certain times last year that he can be that legitimate wide receiver one that everybody wants on the outside, right? Being that 6'2", 6'3", long-armed guy that can go up and just make a play over the top of somebody, even when there's good coverage. When he's not open, he's still open, and Arnold made that kind of play right there.
Yeah, and I think we've touched on it, but I think from a national perspective or from a perspective maybe even within the conference, you might be, if you're a box score watching, you might look at KU's receivers and say, oh, man, none of them really did any. Like, oh, okay, 500 yards, 400, whatever. None of them really did much, but all you have to do is flip on the tape to recognize that Lawrence Arnold, especially along with Quentin Skinner and Luke Grimm, that's about as good of a wide receiver trio as you're going to find, not only in the Big 12, but probably in the country also. And it's just because KU's style of offense is so balanced. You don't necessarily see, when you look at sort of the box score over the course of the season, none of them are really going to be eye-popping, but any given Saturday, or in this case, what day was this game on? Wednesday, Thursday, any given day of the week, those guys could go off and do what they did in this game against UNLV, obviously, with what Lawrence Arnold and Luke Grimm did. So, yeah, I just want to highlight that again because I do think there are probably a lot of people that will say, yeah, KU, do they have, their receivers, I don't know. They don't really seem that good. Watch a game, buddy. I promise. You will think that they are quality players after you turn on the tape.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at the running game and producing a 1,200-yard rusher, a 600-yard rusher, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but quarterback probably had somewhere over 400 or 500 yards rushing. And then you add in the yardage spread around between those guys and also Mason Fairchild, having a few plays in there as well from the tight end position. It's just so balanced. And I think that's the thing that makes them tough is you can't bracket guys. You can't double cover anybody. You can't help because every single one of those guys is capable, and not just to, not to jump to the end or anything like that, but all three of KU starters wound up with at least 80 yards receiving in this game. That's the definition of, you can't focus on one guy because they can all, make plays when their number is called.
Yeah, and obviously in this game, they had it needed them to make plays because the KU run game was not exactly dynamic. They ended up averaging under 4 yards per carry for the game. Yep. Devin Neal averaged just under 3 yards, or just over 3.5 yards per carry for the game. So it's not like KU was finding a ton of success on the ground against UNLV in this game. So they really did kind of need that level of performance from the receivers and from the quarterback with Jason Bean. Now, this game, I think, also is sort of a microcosm of Jason Bean because he's got the 6 touchdowns, but he also had 3 interceptions, the first of which came in the first half when Kansas was up 21-7. UNLV throws a quick interception immediately, and Kansas gets the ball back. Basically,
shout out Patrick Joyner on the pressure, by the way.
Yeah, Patrick Joyner as well making the play there. But yeah, KU gets an interception. It's Craig Young. They've got the ball up 14. At this point in the game, there's still almost 8 minutes left in the second quarter. You have a chance to go up 28-7 really quickly. And Jason Bean gives it right back. Gives it right back with an interception. So UNLV kind of dodges the bullet there. Kansas would eventually force UNLV to punt again. There were some more penalties. You've heard that before. And then Kansas was able to go on one more drive before the end of the first half where they get on the field. There was, again, multiple penalties on both teams on this drive that's eventually led to a Devin Neal 1-yard run that did put Kansas up 28-7 late in the first half. But UNLV was able to sneak a field goal in before the end of the half on a drive that they were able to get down. Again, more penalties against Kansas. I believe there was 3 penalties against Kansas on that last drive of the half for KU,
including 2-on-1 play. Kobe had pass interference, and then OJ Burrows got an unnecessary roughness for hitting the receiver. After the ball had gone past, but it started on a penalty. If you remember, KU got a personal foul on the extra point, right? And then
I believe so, yes.
And so it was a KU got a personal foul, which meant that you're kicking off from further back. With the return, that put the ball on the 40. You wound up having a personal foul, a pass interference, and an unnecessary roughness. It was definitely a drive helped by penalties for sure.
Now, look, I have talked about this in the past. Lance Leipold is the type of coach that anytime the broadcast cuts to him during a game, he looks like he's about to try to punch somebody. He looks like he is just very angry. And I've commented on this before and said, hey, I wonder if they're ever going to cut to Lance Leipold and he's like smiling or something, because I've never seen it. But I will say, in this game, I understand. Lance Leipold definitely had legitimate grievances and reasons to be very upset with this game, because Kansas was getting called for a lot of penalties. They almost had a bowl game record for penalties at the half at this point. So Kansas goes into the half 28-10. You have Lance Leipold. He gives a quick interview at the half like they do with coaches, and he makes a comment about hopefully getting new rest for the second half. Obviously, he was very, very unhappy. So, yeah, this was the one game where I'll say, you know what, Lance, be angry, brother. Be upset. It's fine. I don't need to see you smiling, because even though, Kansas was up 18 at this point, it was a very sloppy first half for KU from that standpoint, from the penalties perspective. And again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. When it comes to the officiating, you can be upset about it one way or the other, but it's almost like the weather. It's just something you got to deal with, I guess. But yeah, in this case, I think Lance Leipold had some legitimate reasons to be upset. But still, Kansas goes into the half up 28-10. You feel pretty good, right? I mentioned it earlier. It didn't really feel like UNLV was going to have enough to try to come back in this game going into the half. But if there was ever a sense that UNLV was going to be able to come back, it quickly started in the third quarter, in which you had the good, you had the bad, and you get the odd way to start the third quarter for Jason Bean with another interception pretty quickly to start the quarter. And UNLV capitalizes also pretty quickly on a touchdown. There was another penalty. I think KU had them stopped on a 3rd and short. There was a penalty against Kansas that gave them a first down inside the 5, and they end up scoring a touchdown to make it 28-17. And yeah, like I said, if there was ever a sense that UNLV was going to come back, it continued with the a quick 3-and-out from KU again. Again, more penalties against Kansas on that drive. And UNLV scores on one play with Ricky White. And Ricky White is the guy that I really wanted to highlight here. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk more about him when game week comes up with KU playing UNLV. Yeah. But Ricky White is a legit stud at wide receiver. He is a really, really elite player. And he, again, had a really, really solid season. I believe 1,400-yard last season for UNLV for the year. And he's coming back, and I don't see any reason for him to slow down. I think he's going to be an elite player. And I think he will also be the first real significant test for the Kansas secondary when you look at KU's schedule, right? I mean, without knowing too much about Lindenwood at the moment, I don't expect Lindenwood, the receivers, are going to really challenge too much the KU secondary. With Illinois, they have some dynamic players, but I think Ricky White is the first legit star that Kansas will have to deal with on the outside in the secondary. And that is something that I will definitely keep an eye on, because, again, in this game, obviously KU gets the win, but Ricky White sort of got hit. 7 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown, and the touchdown he had here in the third quarter that brought UNLV within 4. So he's a guy that I'm sure Kobe Bryant and Melo Dotson are going to be reviewing that film, and I'm sure You think about a guy like Kobe Bryant, he's thinking, I'm not going to let this guy beat me again. That's going to be the real test that we'll see first for KU. I think in the secondary this season will be Ricky White for UNLV coming back to not Lawrence, I guess, to University Park, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I really like that combination of Ricky White and then Jacob DeJesus, who was another guy that had a big game against Kansas. I think he wound up with, like 95 yards receiving, another 40 rushing. And he was kind of an all-purpose guy that they got the ball to in different ways. And White is kind of, your prototypical wide receiver, just in terms of, hey, he's wide receiver one, right? Like he's going to get his in the passing game that way. DeJesus is more of a chess piece that you move around and get him the ball in different ways really quick. And he wound up getting a touchdown in the fourth quarter that kind of made things closer, but we aren't quite there yet. But let's just say at one point in the third quarter, Kansas had gotten to 201 yards of penalties. The previous bowl record, I believe, was either topped or was right there at it at that point in the third quarter. And that's where that betting line, people started kind of talking a little bit online, Nick, and obviously Twitter is such a fascinating place to be in the moment because you're getting people's reaction right as it's happening. And people started mentioning, hey, the betting line was 13.5 points. It dropped to 7.5 points. All of a sudden, KU, a team that had 15 or 55 penalties all year, had 17 in the third quarter. Like by the third quarter, it just, I'm not saying that there was anything weird going on, but I am saying that people were having that conversation where it's like, like something's really weird that's going on here. Either, and a couple of the Kansas penalties, were kind of phantom penalty things. And it wasn't all of them. Some of them were merited, but for Kansas to be a team that was generally pretty disciplined and have, kind of that showing, I think was really staggering. And you combine that with what you're talking about, where that touchdown to Ricky White, all of a sudden it's 28-24. You can't stop committing penalties, all these things. You start wondering, man, is this a game that Kansas is going to give away because of all these extra things and because, they just aren't as sharp as maybe they needed to be?
Well, it's 28-24, and what does Jason Bean do? He goes out and throws his third interception of the game.
All of the bad decisions. Like, I mean, interceptions can happen for different reasons. Sometimes it's a 50-50 ball where your guy just doesn't make the right play on it. Sometimes it's tipped, whatever. All three interceptions, and not to run Jason Bean down. He's a member of the Indianapolis Colts now, and certainly we will get into the positives of Jason Bean here in a minute. But all three of those, Nick, were kind of things where he put the ball at risk when he didn't really need to and could have lived to fight another day.
Yeah. And this one was another one that it was his third of the game, and UNLV gets the ball back in Kansas territory with a chance to go potentially take the lead. The Kansas defense steps up, though, and they force a punt.
Best defensive play call, I thought, from maybe Borland all year was that first down where, you've thrown an interception, the momentum is all with UNLV, and you call the corner blitz. And Maeva didn't see Kobe Bryant at all until the very last minute. It's an 11-yard loss. UNLV's behind the chains at that point, and you get a stop. And it's a great offensive play call. I feel like is really easy to see a lot of times when, hey, there's a guy running wide open. What happened there? And a good offensive play call is coming here in, a minute or two. But I really thought, that quarterback blitz was it wound up being just perfectly executed and was exactly what they had to have at that point. Because if UNLV gets a touchdown there following Jason Bean's third interception, they take the lead. All of a sudden, you're in a spot where, they don't just have the momentum. You're kind of looking around, looking at all the penalties, all the different things, and saying everything is going wrong right now.
Yeah, it would have been panic time. It would have been panic time had that happened. But luckily the defense comes through, and then Kansas goes on another 90-plus yard drive. They have that 98-yard drive earlier in the game to get their first touchdown. Here, 99 yards for Kansas down the field to recapture the momentum, to sort of, restake their claim to this game with a really impressive drive with some runs from Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw as well. There was a nice pass from Jason Bean to Mason Fairchild. And then, of course, another touchdown pass from Bean to Lawrence Arnold for 40 yards that puts Kansas back in front 35-24. And at that point, it's a sort of I think there was a collective sigh of relief, really, because at that point in the game, you're about to start the fourth quarter. And actually, the touchdown was on the first play of the fourth quarter. So you put it back out to a two-possession game. Okay, everything's fine, I think.
Credit to Doug Emelian, and I know that's going to sound weird until you explain it, but you face a 3rd and 17 on the last play of the third quarter. You run Devin Neal, and he gets 16 because Emelian winds up laying just a great block, kind of moving his guy. Devin Neal winds up 1 yard short. At that point, you're inspired to go for it, right? Because it's 4th and 1. This is where the great offensive play call, I thought, came in. They line up in a bunch formation, looking like they're going to run. Lawrence Arnold's almost a tight end with how close he is to the line. They sneak him out late. He winds up being wide open for a 40-yard touchdown. But you probably don't even go for that 4th down if you don't get the 16 yards of the 17 on 3rd down because of that block from Emelian. Like you said, big sigh of relief, but UNLV wasn't going to go away just yet. We talked about DeJesus adding a touchdown a little bit later. They go down the field, and DeJesus winds up getting the touchdown to bring it back to within 5. They go for 2 to try and bring it to within 3, and Maeva can't collect the snap. The play's over before it begins. You're up 5, and then right after that, Kansas responds the way you want to see them respond.
Yep, this would be Jason Bean's 6th touchdown pass. Or no, excuse me, this was his 5th because he saw another one. Yeah, he had another. So this was number 5 for him to Luke Grimm for KU to put him back up even again by 2 possessions. And one other thing we haven't actually mentioned yet about this game is the fact that this was also Jim Zabrowski calling the plays. Right, this was Andy Kolnick. He had left at this point for Penn State. You had Jim Zabrowski. Jeff Grimes had not joined yet. It was Jim Zabrowski calling the plays. So that's something. One other thing to note about how the offense played in this game was you had Zabrowski there calling the plays. But yeah, Kansas scores again and gets back up again. And again, it was so the fourth quarter was just chaos. It was so hectic. But Kansas goes back in front by 2 possessions.
Yeah, and they get the Lawrence Arnold touchdown on a wide receiver screen, in a way that you don't usually see him use necessarily. Great blocking. He makes a guy miss in the open field and gets a 56-yard touchdown. And talking about, like we talked, Lawrence Arnold, wide receiver 1 type stuff, that's the sort of stuff that you wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of. And we've talked a little bit about Jeff Grimes and how we expect there to be maybe more screen game with him as the offensive coordinator. If they get blocking on the outside, like on that play, then it may be something that's pretty effective for him. Defense winds up getting a stop, like you said. Then chaos again. Jason Bean finds Luke Grimm again for his 6th touchdown pass of the day.
Yeah, and then I think probably you mentioned that they eventually get a touchdown. Another touchdown UNLV does on a deep pass on a 4th down.
Yeah,
to sort of last gasp. So they go for 2, they don't get it. So it's 49-36. There's still 7 minutes. There's still almost 7 minutes left in the game at this point. And through all the chaos, through all the hecticness of the start of the fourth quarter, there ends up being 29 points scored in the fourth quarter, by the way. Kansas scores 21, UNLV scores 12. So it's just craziness. Through all of that, Kansas manages, though, to do something that you want to see every team do in the situation. They get the ball back with 6.5 minutes left, and they don't give it back again. A 12-play, 6.5-minute drive to kill the game, kill the clock. They did it exactly how you'd want to see a team do it, running the ball effectively. Jason Bean was only asked to really complete 1 pass on a 3rd and 12 to Jared Casey that kept the drive alive, that helped them run out the clock. But yeah, really, through all of the the penalties, again, maybe undisciplined, maybe isn't the right term, depending on what you think of some of the calls. But through all of that, through all of the mental chaos of the fourth quarter of scoring back and forth, Kansas gets the ball back with 6.5 minutes left, and they say, you know what? This is it. We're not giving it back. Run the clock out. Kansas is your guaranteed rate bowl champions.
Yeah, it was and ended with some fireworks, right? Jason Bean takes a little while to take his knee to help run the clock out. UNLV didn't like that for some reason. The two teams wind up scuffling. That's a long time for bad blood. I'm not saying there's going to be bad blood when the two teams play, in the third game of this season, but you
never know.
It ended in what felt like a little bit of an appropriate way for the way that the game went and everything. But I mean, let's talk about, you mentioned this being a microcosm of Jason Bean in his career, and really the way that he closed out represented the growth that he made over the course of the year. We talked about it, the Oklahoma game, how he made a turnover that could have sealed the game, but the defense bailed him out, got a 3-and-out, and then he goes out and makes just an incredibly clutch throw on fourth down. And after that point, he was really a guy that responded well to adversity. This is a game where, depending on, and I haven't had the chance to ask Jason Bean just how sick he was or whatever, but this is a guy who may or may not have been sick. Through 3 interceptions, UNLV comes almost all the way back, in part because of those. And yet there he was at the end of the game, dealing, making plays. Jason Bean is a genuine hero, I think, in the Kansas football program for a lot of reasons, one of which being Lance Leipold did an interview earlier this offseason where he said that one of the reasons Jason Bean came back was to potentially play wide receiver, right? He was going to get some reps there so that he could show NFL teams, that could potentially be his position, a position that he could stick at. You have the Jalen Daniels injury that you weren't expecting to have, and he needed to step in at quarterback full time. He did it. He didn't complain. He responded to adversity. Kansas doesn't win 9 games without Jason Bean having the year that he had, having the end of the bowl game that he had. And I think when we look back at all of this, if Lance Leipold does build this thing to last, we're going to look back at Jason Bean as kind of one of those unselfish guys who kind of helped lay the foundation for the program to be really successful.
Oh, yeah. He ends up winning Most Valuable Player also for the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. And, yeah, truly, cements his legacy as a guy, like you said, that could be looked back upon as sort of a foundational player of the ultimate growth and ascension of Kansas football, because without him, who knows? Last season could have easily spiraled without Jalen Daniels, considering, the circumstances. So, yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with everything you said on that. Kansas finishes the year 9-4. They finished the year 9-4, get to 9 wins. And now you sort of turn the page over to 2024, and that win for Kansas against UNLV is sort of what springboarded a lot of the preseason hype, I think, coming into this season for Kansas, right? I think people realize, hey, look what they did last year. Jalen Daniels is back healthy again. He looks sharp. He's, doing everything he needs to do to get ready for the season. And so there is sort of this buzz of, okay, last year you overcame some adversity with injuries and you still managed to put together a 9-win season. Now everything is on the table here for KU in 2024.
Yeah. It 100% sets Kansas up with momentum for this season. A lot of times coaches talk about having momentum going into the offseason one way or another. And as weird as it sounds, despite the loss to Arkansas, the way that Kansas came back in that bowl game, I think really gave them a lot of momentum of, okay, we can play at that level. They were a play away. And so that set them up for the 9-win season. I think, this year, if Kansas winds up winning more than 9 games, you're going to look back at that 9-4 season and the way that they closed it against UNLV as being one of those things that likely carried over into the offseason that helped to motivate a lot of people. And it, even beyond that, Kansas finishes the season ranked. They entered the next season ranked in part, I think, because, I don't know if they would have if they had lost to UNLV and went 8-5 last year. That might have been the difference between them slipping into the poll or maybe being an others receiving votes type of team. I do think it'll be interesting to see Kansas UNLV this year because a lot of the same pieces are back. I mean, obviously Jason Bean has moved on, is getting his NFL shot. So you get Jalen Daniels back. And Maeva's now a USC Trojan, transferring over for the chance to play for Lincoln Riley. But Barry Odom's still the coach at UNLV. It's still Brennan Marion's fun go-go offense. And I think we haven't talked about him yet. I think one of the interesting things about this UNLV team is going to be what they look like at quarterback with a guy like Matthew Sluka, who transferred in from Holy Cross. Nick, they could have more quarterback running game with Sluka because that's kind of what he did at Holy Cross. Not that he didn't throw the ball well, but he really ran the ball well at Holy Cross and could add another element to kind of what UNLV does with his legs.
Yeah, he was very much a dual threat quarterback. You mentioned he ran for over 300 yards in a game on the ground for Holy Cross. And listen, Holy Cross has been a perennial top 10, 15 FCS program. So I will be very curious to see. He seems to be the projected starter for UNLV to start the season. We'll see what he does, obviously, in the games before they play against KU. So, yeah, there's an added element to that because, obviously, I think Maeva was a pretty significant aspect of the success they had last season, trying to replace him. But, listen, Brennan Marion was probably one of the hottest, up-and-coming coaching candidates really around the coaching carousel and interviewed for some jobs and ended up staying at UNLV. So the fact that he is there, you expect that UNLV is going to be quality on offense. And look, this is a UNLV program that, like Kansas, well, I guess I should say like Kansas, but obviously is in a similar boat of they had been bad and they are rising up under Barry Odom. And this is a program that some might even suggest has a chance to maybe make a push to win the Mountain West and maybe even go beyond that and be like an outside dark horse for the college football playoff.
Yeah, they've got 3 games against power conference teams, one of which, of course, being Kansas. The other thing that I think is really kind of fascinating with them, Nick, is Barry Odom's obviously a defensive guy. That's his background, and so if you're expecting UNLV to take a jump this year from where they were a year ago, it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. And we talked about Kansas's receivers and really kind of having their way against that secondary. That was probably the area where Kansas enjoyed the most success from a position group standpoint. UNLV went out and landed about 37 SEC guys to join that secondary to try and shore that up. And like you said, it will merit watching those first few games because KU UNLV is not the first game on the schedule. How much do those guys upgrade that back end? Because quite frankly, if UNLV can be just as good offensively this year and they can shore up that back end, they could be a really, really dangerous team. And of course, Kansas getting UNLV this year at Children's Mercy Park, that adds an interesting element to it too.
Yeah, I'm very excited to dive deeper into UNLV once KU gets ready to play them coming up later on this season in Game 3, as you said. But, of course, that wraps up for the Jayhawk Rewind for this season. With KU finishes 9-4. Now we're ready to turn the page to 2024. We are exactly 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks away from kickoff for Kansas in 2024 against Lindenwood. We're very excited. We're going to have a couple of guests coming on over the course of the next 2 weeks before kickoff, including a special guest from the women's soccer program as well. So be on the lookout for that. And also, we might have a chance to speak with another very special guest before the start of the season coming up also. So you definitely want to keep an eye out on your feeds, on YouTube, on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get the show. But that's going to wrap things up here. So once again, leave a 5-star rating review, like, comment, subscribe if you like what you're listening to. Share your thoughts as KU enters into 2024 with us here on the show and more. But we'll be back again next week to talk more as we wrap up fall camp. Kansas football media day will be coming next week, so we'll have plenty more coverage to break down over the course of the next basically less than 2 weeks before the start of 2024. But until then, we'll talk to you again soon. He's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. We'll see you again soon. See ya.